So thank you, Elizabeth, for taking us through check-in. Some fantastic check-ins there, some really great work happening. And Yvonne, some nice kind of just acceptance, I think, of what's going on at the moment as well, and lovely bright colours. So thank you for that, Yvonne. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce Michele to you. As I said, she's a member of NAWBO NYC chapter along with Elizabeth and I. And she is also one of the most accessible attorneys I have had the pleasure of coming across. She does have a real knack for explaining things in a way that are really easy to understand. I apologize, Michele, if I'm setting the bar too high for you. I will leave it with you now to explain a little bit about how you got to where you are today, and then really just to take us into your session for today. I know you've got some material to share. The handout hopefully is available for everybody in chat now. If not, I'll email it out afterwards. And you're going to have time for just questions as well. Is that right at the end? Okay, so over to you.
Hey, everybody. I'm Michele Berdinis. I spent the first 20 years of my legal career representing startups, sounds like most of you have, from formation through all their private placements and doing all their contract work and mergers and acquisitions. And about 15% of my practice was trademark. And at the age of 58, so younger than you, Pat, I left my firm where I was a partner and I struck out on my own. And now my practice is mostly limited to just trademark. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So the handout will be really useful to you. It will make it so you can listen to what I'm saying instead of frantically scribbling things down, because a lot of the detail is in that handout. So try to relax, enjoy the talk. Don't worry so much about writing everything down. And I'm going to go through some stuff to give us all a nice baseline for what we're talking about. And then we're going to throw it open to questions. Okay, so let's share my screen. We will start from there. Okay, is everybody seeing that? Good, okay, so that's who you are. So let's start just by talking about the different kinds of intellectual property that exist out in the world. There are really only 4 kinds. A patent protects your rights to an invention. So if you come up with something that is novel and non-obvious and has some use in the world, then that you can get a patent to protect that invention. A copyright protects original works of authorship. So that's what you use to protect things like books, white papers, paintings, photographs, drawings, movie scripts, things like that. That's what copyright is for. Trade secret protects business secrets. Examples of those are the formula for Coca-Cola, the algorithms that Google uses to run its search engine. And so those are the first 3. And then the 4th one is trademark rights. And trademark rights protect a brand. That's what we're going to be focusing on this initial portion. But as we get to the Q&A, if you have questions, don't worry about what part of IP it falls into. I'll probably talk about which part of IP it falls into just to help you, again, start to build that framework that you need in order to hang this information on. So don't worry about that, but the focus of today is going to be trademark. Okay, so what is a trademark? A trademark is anything that identifies a source of goods, right? So that could be words, like the word Nike or the word Nest. It could be a logo, like the Kate Spade logo for her brand, or a Nike swoosh. It could just be colors. It could, like the color of a Louboutin shoe, or that certain color blue that we all know immediately is Tiffany. It could be packaging, like the shape of a Chanel bottle. It could be smell. So the smell of Play-Doh is a registered trademark. Or a sound. When you turn on your Apple computer and it goes, boom, that's a registered trademark. So it's anything that identifies the source of goods. It's not just a computer, it's an Apple brand computer. And I can tell that because it has a little Apple on it and it says Apple on it. And when I open it up, it goes, boom. That's a trademark. What do trademark rights protect? If you have trademark rights, it means that you can stop people from selling products in a similar industry using a similar trademark, right? There's a lot to unpack there, right? So for example, Pat has her granola, right? Right? So you can't, if somebody wanted to sell Patty's granola, they probably couldn't do that, right? Because it's similar. If somebody wanted to sell Pat's popcorn, they probably couldn't do that because that's another type of snack food. So it's not just limited to your exact trademark, and it's not just limited to exactly what you sell. It's a broader scope than that. What you can't use a trademark to prevent is to prevent somebody from selling a similar or identical product under a different brand, right? So all it does is it protects the brand. You can't say, I invented this amazing new widget and I'm calling it Michelle's widget. That doesn't mean somebody else can't make a widget. They can, they just can't sell it under my brand, okay? So I'm going to talk for just a little bit about what it takes to build a really high value brand, okay? So the first thing you have to do is pick a strong trademark. We're going to go through these individually, okay? And that means that it has a lot of marketing potential and it's legally available. Then you need to sell an awesome product. You need to market the hell out of it. And then you have to defend it against infringers. So sometimes you'll read in the paper about some really big company going after some little guy for trademark infringement. And everybody thinks the big company is a bad guy, but they have to do it. If they don't protect their brand, then they can lose it. So some are too aggressive, and I write about those things too, but for the most part, people have to protect their brands or they could lose their rights. Okay, so let's talk about the first thing here. I'm going to see if I can get rid of this here. Just want to close this little side thing. Okay, so trademark lawyers put things into 5 categories. The first one we're going to talk about is generic. A generic word for a product or service can never be a trademark. You can, and by that I mean you can never get rights, exclusive rights to it. So about a block away from me, about 3 years ago, a place selling raw cookie dough opened, and they called themselves Dough, D-O, with a long symbol over it. That I can still open, and I said to myself, wow, somebody could open a raw cookie dough place around the corner and call it Dough, and they couldn't do a thing about it. And about a year later, around the corner, somebody opened a cookie place and called it Dough, D-O-U-G-H, and they couldn't do a thing about it. Same thing with Euro for sandwich, right? A Euro is a sandwich, so you can't have Euro brand sandwiches. Okay, so you will never, ever, ever, ever get rights to the generic word for what you do or what you make. Words that are merely descriptive can eventually become trademarks and can be registered, but it's difficult and it'll always be vulnerable. So things like made well for clothing or untuck it for clothing, those kinds of things tend to be weaker. A suggestive word makes a really great trademark. And in my opinion, a suggestive word is where legal strength and marketing strength come together. So for example, my favorite suggestive mark is Nest. It doesn't tell you really anything about what it does. It just tells you how you're going to feel when you use something made by Nest, right? Whether it's a smoke detector or a thermostat, you're going to feel safe and comfy and happy in your home. And that's what they try to make you understand through that. And they can sell anything using that brand. Okay, arbitrary words are regular words in English, but have nothing to do with what they're selling. So you can't have Apple brand apples, but you can have Apple brand computers. And fanciful words are made up combinations of letters and numbers, and those can be registered and they can have very strong trademark rights, but not so very strong on the marketing side. And the examples I use there are UGG and Pentium. Okay, so those are the 5 categories. Oops. So this is a chart I like to show people. If you use one of those suggestive, arbitrary, or fanciful kinds of names like Nest, that blue line is what the value of your trademark will do, right? You will start with absolutely no value, right? People will look at that brand, they won't have any idea what you're doing, what you're selling, nothing. But the advantage is that you can build that value over time and it can grow to infinity. You know, there are some brands out there that just have an extraordinary amount of value. I would sometimes ask people, would you rather own all of Intel's patents or the Nike brand? And it's kind of a toss-up. I mean, both of them are highly valuable. If you use something that's really similar to lots of other people, like Office Depot, you're going to have some value going in because everybody's going to know you've got something to do with offices, but it's kind of going to go down over time because nobody distinguishes Office Depot from Office Max, right? Everybody remembers Staples, but like they're all the same place. If you use a descriptive mark like Radio Shack, again, you're going to have this very, very nice high thing because everybody's going to know what you do, but over time it's going to decrease in value. If Amazon had called itself Books Online, you know, where would they be today? And then if it's owned by somebody else like Tiffany, you might start off with a lot of value and then you'll get a cease and desist letter and you'll have no value. So that's kind of my view of this as a trademark attorney. So step one is to pick the legally, and I just like to tell people the availability of a domain name for your mark doesn't tell you anything at all about the availability of trademark rights. So for example, when I started BeeLine, somebody else already owned BeeLine.com. It's like a temp worker company or like a human resources kind of a company. That's fine. I don't care. I can still use the word BeeLine for legal services and let them use BeeLine for what they're doing. So just because the domain wasn't available doesn't mean it's not available for me as a trademark in a different field. On the other hand, you can also get very false negatives, right? So if I were the former mayor of New York City and I decided I was going to go into the business of selling soda pop and I saw that koch.com was available, that doesn't mean I can sell Coke, right? Because some people pronounce KOCH as Coke instead of Koch. So no, that's not going to happen. All right, so domain name availability really doesn't tell me anything at all. You have to use what are called the DuPont factors to determine whether it's confusingly similar. And that's a pretty complicated thing to do. Okay, so what's next? Step two is to sell a great product and market the hell out of it. I'm a trademark lawyer. This is what I call a SEP, which is somebody else's problem. I'll leave it to you. And then the fourth thing you need to do is defend against infringers. And I can tell you that if step one was done well, step four is a piece of cake. It's really easy to get a trademark registration for your trademark, which makes it really easy to defend that mark. When I need to write a cease and desist letter to somebody, it's going to be really easy to do. It's going to be extremely effective. You're not going to end up in court, and you're not going to be getting a cease and desist letter from somebody else. So this is, the next couple of slides are just things that people always ask about. So I figured I'd get them out of the way and then we can jump into our questions. How much do these things cost? So these are the four types of IP again. Patents, to get a patent costs $10,000 to $30,000. And to defend that patent is $100,000 to millions of dollars. Copyright, the cost, I didn't change this slide. The cost to register is actually more than $35 now. They increased the fee last year and I didn't change the slide. It's pretty inexpensive usually to defend copyright as well. Trade secret has no legal cost associated with it at all. It's just the cost to actually implement security measures. It can be very expensive and difficult to defend a trade secret, and the remedies are rarely adequate. If you have a secret recipe for your granola and nobody could figure that out by looking at the granola, and one of your employees stuck it up on the internet, You could sue them and you could win, but I doubt that they're going to have enough money to actually make you whole. So that's where the difficulty comes in. Trademarks cost about $300 per class, which is a very complicated thing, but and attorney's fees can be, I have flat fee packages starting at $249, but figure about $1,000 in legal fees and about $300. So not very expensive. And in my 25 years of practicing trademark law, I have never had a trademark dispute go to litigation. We send a cease and desist. We might have to send a second one. We maybe argue back and forth for a little bit, but it usually gets resolved that way. A lot of people always ask this as well. What are all those little squiggles and stuff? So a TM means that you have a trademark which isn't registered with any trademark office, and you sell stuff. A SM is a service mark, so you sell services and it's not registered. R in a circle you can only use if you have a registered trademark. And then the C in a circle is what you use for copyright. So, little quiz here before we jump into the questions. Which of these is the oldest trademark? I'll sing the Jeopardy song and then we'll move on. Okay, ready? So it depends on what you mean. Is it the first, which is the oldest registration or which is the first use? So if we're looking at actual first use, then the Budweiser, the Louis Vuitton is actually the first one to be used a year before Budweiser, but they didn't actually get around to doing a registration until 1976, over 100 years later. Budweiser, on the other hand, has the oldest surviving. There's older registrations than 1886, but they're the only one. And then also 1800, which is a nice thing about trademarks. So patents expire, copyrights expire, trademarks, they never die as long as you keep using them. Questions?
Okay, thank you for that, Michelle. Do you want to stop sharing the screen so we can see everybody's faces? And if we need to dip back in and out, yeah.
Yeah, hang on. I've lost my cursor.
Stop share at the top.
Escape. How about escape? Escape works. There, now I've got my cursor back. There we go. Sorry.
Okay, so questions for Michelle then. Lisa, first hand I saw up.
Thank you so much for the information. So, oh my God, maybe over a decade ago, I'll say registered a trademark, and I probably have things twisted around. So the marketing stylist, I trademarked. So it has a TM on the end, but it has nothing to do with product. It's a service-based business. Should that have been an SM versus a TM, or should it have be the R? I'm not sure which one that even should be. And do I need to redo it at this point?
Yeah, so if you use TM instead of SM, nobody cares.
Okay.
It's not a problem. It's like legally, I don't care. Most people recognize TM better. Just stick with TM. If you have a registered trademark, if it actually is registered with the US Trademark Office or the EU Trademark Office, or any other country around the world, if it is actually registered, you really should use the R. It's not bad to use the TM, but you're missing out on some of the value you get by registering the mark by not using the R in a circle.
Okay, so it is registered because I went through the US Patent Trademark Office, went through the whole process, did it myself. So that is a registered mark. That is not a TM. That is a registered mark.
And as long as it's still alive, if you've done then absolutely you should be using the R in a circle. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so all right, so that's my second. I'm getting ready to register a bunch of stuff. Well, it's a phrase and then the name of a product line. I'm getting ready to register. And so then I think I've run a tally of like $1,500 so far, just because of all the classes, making sure that it's registered in those classes.
Yeah, you can reduce the filing fee if you use pre-approved goods and services descriptions. And it used to just be like a $50 savings, but they just increased the cost of both. And now it's $100 a class that you save.
Oh, okay. So I use pre-approved descriptions. Okay.
Yeah, if it works. I mean, sometimes it doesn't, right? Sometimes you're selling something that's so unusual that there's nothing that's pre-approved.
So,
but I'd say probably 90% of the time I can find a pre-approved one. And then you save if all of your everything you're selling in. And then also, you know, if you're selling something that falls into 5 different classes, you don't have to register it in 5 different classes.
oh, really? So, okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, you know, you can get the coverage. Like if you're selling 15 different types of food, they might fall into 3 different classes, but you know, maybe just register in the 2 most prominent ones. I mean, you don't have to do all of them. So,
okay. So for, let's say it was clothing, because what I saw was, it's like, there's a class for hoodies, there's a class for blouses, and it's like, seriously?
No, that's not true. No, all clothing is a class 25, and that covers pretty much all clothing. It doesn't include things like shoes and handbags, but it includes apparel.
I swear I saw one that said for hoodies. I'm like, are we really going to get this? Okay.
No. It can be weird. Don't misunderstand me. It can be really weird. Like software is actually in 2 different classes.
Okay.
Depending on whether you download it or you use it as software as a service. But clothing's all in class 25, all of it.
That just saved me a whole lot of money then. Okay.
Well, there you go. You've paid for your time already, Lisa. I'm going to go to Pam next. You had a question, and then I'll bring Yvonne in. Pam, you need to unmute.
Thanks, Michelle. My question is on the registered TM. So if it's not registered, is that defensible?
Oh, Michelle might have. Oh no, she's there. Yeah.
Are you losing Pam?
We lost you very briefly.
Okay, I lost what Pam said. Okay, I'm sorry. I lost what Pam said. Go ahead. Could you? I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question?
TM not registered but used for 25 years. Is that defensible?
Yes. So trademark and copyright both spring into existence as soon as you create them, right? So with trademark, as soon as you start using a brand to sell a product or service, you start to accumulate what are called common law trademark rights. And then you can register those rights. And by registering those rights, you get, it's like the difference between having a toothpick and a baseball bat. You get bigger, stronger rights. For the main thing you get is you get the entire country instead of only where you've sold.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
So if your whole business has been focused on the Northeast, and then you've been doing that for 25 years, and now you want to start in California, and somebody started something similar in California 5 years ago, there's nothing you can do about that, right? But a registration gets you the whole country. There's other things that it also gets you, but that's the big one.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you plan, like if you're only selling them, like initially you're selling very locally, but you have plans to expand nationwide, it's a really good, it's a good way to make sure that when you get to wherever you're going, it's going to be available.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Yvonne, bringing you in next.
Okay, so I've been in my service business. I've had my service business for about 18 years, and I did register the trademark and everything for years. And then maybe, I don't know, a couple of years ago, I just stopped registering it and everything. I mean, I've been established, and I just stopped paying a fee. I mean, I don't think, it's like, I don't think anybody's gonna do anything with the name or anything at this point. It's such a long time.
Right. And you know, that can work. I wrote a great blog post about, I forget what the name of the town is, this little teeny town, and it's known for being dead center the geographical center of the United States. And they built this tower, and they registered that trademark, and they let the registration die. And then they registered again and they let it die. And then some town like 20 miles away has now like just started using geographical center of the United States. And they think that because that registration is dead, they can do that. But that those common law rights, they continue, they go right on along all the way, right? So you can rely solely on the common law rights.
Yeah, I think at this point in time, I'm pretty safe, you know. So.
Well, yeah, and you know, again, if you ever do need, I can tell you just from experience, if I have to write a cease and desist letter and I get to say registered trademark number, blah, 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 it really is the difference between poking somebody with a toothpick and hitting them with a baseball bat.
Right.
A lot of people don't even realize that common law trademarks exist. And so they just sit there and they just tell you to stuff it. And then it just becomes harder to convince them that they really do have to stop.
I would be flattered if somebody tried to use the name. How's that?
Okay, so who else has a question? Suzanne came on first, and then I'm going to go for Kimball after that. So Suzanne, fire away.
This isn't so much a question, but I have a graphic design firm as well as the jewelry. And so many of my clients, they don't realize that the copyright is usually not something that I sell. And I've had clients that also have gone to a webmaster to have a web site designed, and they don't realize that if they change webmasters, they're going to have to start over. And I think that's something that is just really important to pass on, that you need to buy the copyright if you're buying a brochure or a logo or whatever, rather than just paying them for the design.
Yes, and that there's a different presentation I do, which is like the top, like the easiest things to get right that'll save you massive problems down the road. And one of the things I talk about is if you hire an independent contractor, and that independent contractor is going to be creating any kind of intellectual property for you, a written report, a drawing, they're going to take photographs, whatever the heck they're doing. If you don't have a written agreement that says that they are assigning their rights and the intellectual property to you, you do not own them. And that is, if they're your employee, you do. An independent contractor, and that is something, you're absolutely right, most people do not realize. So yeah, all you need is a simple independent contractor agreement that says they assign you all the rights and it's all taken care of. Yep.
Hey, Kimball, did you have a question for Michele?
Yeah, this is somewhat related. We are a printing and promotional products company, and we partnered with a graphic designer and built a brand together. It was just for fun, and we sold t-shirts online under the name Peace Love Beer, and it was quite successful. And then we decided to go our separate ways. We never put anything in writing, but he stuck me with probably $2,000 worth of inventory that he's now taken his website, which is his, because he was the one who did the website, and he's gone to a new clothing company and is selling Peace Love Beer clothing on this website. And I question whether I need to be vindictive or not, or just let it go. But I have $2,000 worth of clothing that I would like to sell. My understanding from my lawyer is that because there was never anything in writing, but it was definitely a 50-50 agreement, he paid for the social media, the web hosting, we paid for the products, that if I sold the stuff, I would have to send him a check for a part of it, which I'm fine with. But I just want to get the stuff sold, so I untie my money. I'm trying to figure out the rules.
Yeah.
And technically, he owes me half of everything he sold on that website at this point.
Right. Yeah. So what you had there was what's called a general partnership.
Mm-hmm.
And now you don't have a general partnership. And it's a big, right? We can all say who owns those shirts because you can touch them and they're sitting in your house. Mm-hmm. But this other stuff, this intellectual property, who owns that? That's a big,
he has never
scary open item.
He's never trademarked that intellectual
But he has common law rights, right? Well, somebody does. Somebody has common law rights to that brand. And I don't know if it's you or him, or if you co-own it.
I
honestly, right? I mean,
because it's never really been dissolved in writing. And
but it was never put together in writing, right? So if I were you, I would sell this stuff and make him come after you, which he's not going to do.
He's not
I
gonna
wouldn't
do.
make any
He's not
more
even
of
gonna
it
know
to
I'm
sell,
selling, and I'm just gonna sell it on
but I would
Facebook
just freaking
Marketplace
go for it.
for
You
the
know,
money.
yeah. I mean, and again, you know, that story is one I've heard in different forms a million times. It all seems like it's going to work out. So don't feel bad, or like it just happens. You know, we get into these things, they don't seem like it's going to be a big deal. So we kind of just go ahead, and they're a nice guy or a nice person. And then, you know, it doesn't quite work out the way we hoped.
So what would be a good, not necessarily complicated, but a good simple step to minimize the risk of that happening?
Put something in writing.
So it doesn't need to necessarily be a formal legal document, but an exchange of correspondence would.
Yeah, and the key, the value of putting something in writing is that it forces you to talk about the stuff that you're not thinking about, right? If you have to write down who owns everything, all of a sudden you're going to say, oh, wait, who owns that? Who owns that? Oh, we didn't talk about that. Yeah, we should talk about that. Let's talk about that. What happens if this stops working? Like, who's going to do this? Who's going to write? Just the act of writing it down makes you start thinking about things in a different way. And anything written down is better than nothing written down.
Like a
Michele,
it's like
I
a
have
prenup.
question in Kimball's case, since he's a designer, doesn't he own that logo since there was nothing in writing?
Well, but
built it
presumably
together.
he gave her permission to use it to
use
stick
it.
it on those shirts.
Mhm.
Well, we helped with the design too. This was,
Oh, okay.
it
Gotcha.
wasn't, he
And
just, his side of things was that he managed the sales on social media and the web
Okay.
store. We managed the product, but we branded the thing together.
Yeah. So
I quite like Michelle's pragmatic solution. Go for it and see
Ella.
what he does.
I'm all for it. I just want to get rid of the damn shirts.
Yeah.
I don't care.
yeah, get rid of yeah.
They're cute. Someone needs to own them. Doesn't need to be me.
And certainly not $2,000 worth of them, yes. Who else has a question for Michele?
I have a success story about a copyright legal battle. When we named our company, we named it Printelligence. We grabbed the Facebook page, the Instagram account, the printelligence.com. We grabbed all the things on social media. It all looked good. Then we get a cease and desist letter from HP, because HP has a software brand that's called Printelligence that is trademarked or copyrighted or whatever it was. So we went to court with them and we won because our business had all the stuff. They had never done the work to get the stuff. So in the eyes of the court, whenever you searched for Printelligence, you found us, not them.
Wow.
Oh,
So we got to keep it.
Good
wow.
for you. It's a great name.
It is.
So
Great
I know
name.
that one of Michelle's hobbies is that she searches out great trademark stories. So go on, let's play trademark story battle, Michele. What's one of your favorite trademark stories?
My all-time favorite, there's this dude named Doug Lahaki. And on Thanksgiving Day, I think 2014, Mr. Lahaki spent over $50,000 filing over 150 trademark applications for things like Disney and Ford. And it takes a while sometimes for things to die, but there's only 2 left. And they'll be dead. I mean, it's not like any of these are going to get through. And yeah, 50,000, he just flushed $50,000 down the toilet. He thought he could just like send something to the trademark office and the trademark office would just give him a trademark registration. I don't know what the man was thinking, but for $25,000, I would have told him not to bother.
That's a great story.
Yeah, that sounds like too much imbibing on Thanksgiving.
I don't know, man. And now all the people who are, trying to squat on names that they think the football team in Washington is going to use.
Oh,
You
God.
can't squat on a trademark. It doesn't work. You can't get a registration until you use it. You're registering rights, and the only way to get rights is to use it. So if you file an application, which you can do even if you're not using it, you could file an application on the basis of intent to use. Yeah, you're gonna have that application in before they will, but they're just gonna make it go away because you'll never use it to have a football team. So, and even if they tried to do it for t-shirts or something, I mean, it's not a good strategy. You can spend a lot of money to get absolutely nothing. Squatting doesn't work with trademark.
Lisa, did you have a question?
I did. You said that you can file an application for intent to use.
Yes.
How much is that?
So the application, everything about it is done exactly the same way, except you just file on the basis of intent to use, section 1B. And then it goes through this normal review and it gets published for opposition and all that stuff. And then at the time when you would have expected to just get your certificate in the mail, what happens is you instead get a notice of allowance saying, okay, we've done our review and you're good to go, but you have to prove to us that you're using it. And then you have to file a statement of use, and there is an additional fee for that. It's another $100 per class to file a statement of use. And then once they approve the statement of use, then they issue you your certificate. It's a really good strategy if you haven't launched yet and you know that that's available and you want to make sure that it stays available. You want to be there, you want to get your place in line and not have anybody take it. In my career, I actually beat somebody once by less than 24 hours. There's over 3,000 applications filed a day. So, I mean, it sounds really weird, but yours, yeah, it's amazing sometimes. When I'll search availability for a client and there was somebody who filed last week, there was somebody who filed last month.
Wow.
It's like, it's so heartbreaking.
Okay. But if you can show prior use, if you were using it and they just beat you to the registration, can you?
If you're already using it on the day that, yeah. If you're already using it on the day you file the application, you should file it on the basis of use. Yep. Save yourself time and money. Yep.
Okay. Any more questions for Michele? Very quickly, Michele, what are the kind of regular killers for a trademark application, as in the things that mean your trademark application is more likely to die? So what sort of things should we be avoiding?
Yeah, so the biggest one is that the trademark office finds it confusingly similar to an existing registration. And that happens, I mean, 25 years ago when I started practicing in this area, it wasn't as bad. There's so many businesses out there, so many products. It's really hard to find something that's actually available. The second is if the trademark office finds that your trademark is generic or merely descriptive, which we talked about, then they will reject your trademark application because you can't register something that's generic, and merely descriptive isn't going to work. There's ways to hedge that bet, but they're going to reject it on that basis. The other things are usually pretty easy to deal with. They don't like the way that you described your goods and services. They want to change the wording, and they usually suggest wording. And as long as that works for you, then that's cool. Sometimes you've put a bunch of stuff into one class that should have been in a bunch of classes. Sometimes you put stuff in a bunch of classes that should have been in one class. A lot of things get rejected because the specimen doesn't work. So in addition, you have to send in like a thing that actually shows you're selling that stuff using that brand, a package with the label on it or whatever it is. And people screw up their specimens a lot. They send in stuff. There's a great one I found. This is hilarious. A dude trying to register Nike for machinery, different types of machinery. And his specimen is this little vacuum cleaner, clearly in his house. And he writes the word Nike on a piece of paper and he taped it to the vacuum cleaner. And I mean, you can literally see the tape. Like, I mean, it's hilarious. It's like, yeah, that is not going to work, right? So those are the kinds of things that people end up getting rejected for. Those first two are the biggies. Those are the big ones. Confusingly similar to an existing mark, and generic or merely descriptive.
Okay, so thank you so much for that, Michele. If anybody wants to follow Michele's musings and stories around trademarks, following either BeeLine Legal on Twitter or Michele herself on LinkedIn are great ways of just keeping up with some of these. And I have become fascinated by trademarks since knowing Michele, and since Michele helped to register one of our trademarks. So thank you so much for that, Michele. I think a round of applause for Michele for that bit. I am now going to hand back to Elizabeth, who is just going to close out the meeting today.